Hey everyone, it's Book of Katherine. I hope you're doing well. We are back for part 2 of my depression series. This is an excellent series that will help you know about the mental health field. It's very hard to find out some basic facts about it. And also with depression, there is a way to actually do a lot of work on your own. If you can't afford a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you can only afford a psychiatrist, but you can't afford a psychologist. This is going to help you all out. If you know somebody that's actually dealing with mental health issues, this will also help you out a lot. Today's topic is going to be on diagnosing yourself as far as where you are on the depression scale. And I learned about this the first time that I was seen for depression. Actually, the first time I went in with symptoms, the guy went through all these symptoms with me, like I was having night sweats and I wasn't sleeping terribly, and I had this fatigue where I would be in class and I'd just be sitting there in class and my head would just like loll back, like it just fall over. I couldn't hold up my head to actually pay attention in class. It was awful. And I went to the doctor and I was just like, what is going on? Like, I'm having these night sweats and I'm having my headache, can't hold my head up. And he just was like doing all these checks on me. And then finally he's like, are you depressed? And I was like, no. No, like I was involved in all these activities. I was teaching all these things and I was all over the place. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? And what happened was, it turns out there's a different type of, on the scale of depression, there's a scale of, I'm going to give you a scale where you can go from 0 to 100, I believe the score is. And if you're over 50 or over a certain number, it'll tell you in the book, if you're over a certain number, then you branch into what's called major depression. There are several different types of depression. It depends on where, from mild depression to severe depression. And what happened is that I was on, obviously, with my upbringing, shocker, I was severely depressed, severely. And so what happens is that turns into physical symptoms, and it happens to a lot of people who are not allowed to feel or can't actually feel emotions. Like at that point when I did that, I had never felt the emotion anger. Never actually felt it. Didn't know what it felt like. Couldn't tell you. So my body was just like it couldn't get its attention to me through emotions. So it was trying to get my attention through my body. And when I did the scale, like I was well over 50 and they were like, and my doctor needed to know that. So the first doctor that saw me, they were like, are you depressed? And I was like, no. And then when I went to the next doctor, they were like, do this scale for me. And I did the scale and they were like, now I know where to begin. Does that make sense? And so it's really important to know the differences between mild depression, depression, which is like the blues, and it only lasts a certain amount of months. Like I believe it's like 3 months or something like that. If it lasts for 6 months, it's a little longer. The book will tell you exactly the numbers. I'm not a doctor, Ask your doctors. Get their backup opinion. And then it goes into, if you're severely depressed, you can go into what's called major depression, and that acts out in physical symptoms. And there's a whole bunch of them. And it's really good. They're used to do presentations on major depression for like separate things on depression versus major depression. And the majority of society gets like these blues things of this milder form of it. And then there's this big scale. So when you're getting treatment for depression, or you're worried about someone in your life that may or may not have depression or anxiety, or fatigue or anything like that. Fatigue is a big sign of major depression, if I remember correctly. I think that was me. Like I had major fatigue, like I couldn't hold my head up. That was fatigue. And lethargy, it was really, really weird, but I was still bright and bushy-tailed. It's just I couldn't do all I wanted to do. And so what happened is that they gave me this scale. And so the scale was in this book, Feeling Good Handbook, and it's called the BDC method, cognitive therapy, versus, I believe it's the BCI method, which is what the psychiatry field used to use. I think they might have moved on to BDC, the BDI. And it turned out that when they did tests, it turned out that it came out for people who know the jargon. The BDI scale was 95% as accurate as the BDI scale. So cognitive therapy is basically when you heal yourself. And so this guy invented cognitive therapy, and then he wrote a book on it for us, for those of us lay people who want to heal ourselves and can get through depression. I know they're saying that, they don't know the causes, but the causes are what's going on up here in our neural pathways, and this helps us remap them ourselves. So first thing you always want to do before you get treatment, or if you're thinking about getting treatment or you're worried about someone that you know, is you can take this test, and it's only 25 questions long, and it just goes here, and then here, and then you just add up the score. You find out the score. It just asks you questions like this. It asks you, feeling unhappy or blue, and then you rate it as not at all, somewhat, moderately, a lot, or extremely. And then crying spells or tearfulness, That's one of the things. Feeling discouraged, feeling hopeless, low self-esteem, feeling worthless or inadequate, guilt or shame, criticizing yourself or blaming yourself, difficulty making decisions. And that sounds like a lot of things we hear about in society all the time. And usually they just prescribe drugs for that. Well, this is what it will do, is ask you where you are on the scale and rank these, exactly how much they're present in your life. Things like crying. As you heard, there are physical symptoms and then there's emotional symptoms. And you just do a little scale of this and then you add it up. And then what he does is, for the rest of the book, he helps you actually go through methods to remap your brain, retrain those thoughts. Like Dr. Phil says, perception is reality. That's what's going on in here, your cognitive functions. Whatever your thoughts are what create your emotions. If you're highly emotional, and like I've been going through that lately, I've been going through a really big thing of working through, now that I'm able to do more, but I don't have an escape for it. Like I'm in this weird place, like I want to get out, like I just don't want to be in here anymore and I want to get out, but I don't really have any ways to like get out. My body can't handle it. My physical therapy isn't there yet. And that brings up a lot of emotions. And I've had to really work on being back into my mind. They say trust your body. No, you're supposed to, like, your body alerts you to the thoughts that you're having in your mind. And so I've been doing a lot of work of like, what is it that I really believe? What is it I really think? What's really going on in this situation? And I use all of the techniques that I learned from Feeling Good. Now, I had psychologists that were walking me through it and helped me through it. But what he does is, if you want to do it on your own, he gives you the ways to do it. And then he has you retake this test every week to see how you're doing on the scale and to see if you can move your way back. And that's what he says, is that they can move your way back. But he also says if you get on a certain number, then you need to seek attention right away. I don't recommend somebody taking the test for you if you want to do that, but I mean, have the person take the test themselves. So anyway, and then he gives you how to interpret the checklist. And I just want to read one more thing from this. So this is in chapter 2, just so you know, it's on page, I always say to get like a 1995 version or earlier, before Agenda 21 got it. So, but page 20 is where the checklist is. And the the new mood therapy. This was written so long ago. So it's like the new mood therapy, but it says the good news is that anxiety, guilt, pessimism, procrastination, low self-esteem, and other black holes of depression can be treated quickly and effectively without drugs. And they're right. They're right. Like, I'm not on drugs anymore. And I had psychiatrists being like, you should be prepared for the fact that you'll always be on drugs. And nope, got off of them. And so this really, really helps. And I used all these charts in here. Now, once you add it up, then they give you a score here. And they have different levels. They say no depression, normal but unhappy, mild depression, moderate depression, severe depression, extreme depression. So once you're in a severe depression, that's the same thing as major depression. Severe depression is the same thing, if I remember correctly. So it's good to know where you are on that scale, to know how much help that you need and whether or not you are depressed. This is really, really helpful. I remember I went to a talk once, and me and another woman brought our entire families to this talk. And I remember as we were leaving, I brought them to the talk so that they could see what it was I had, like the major depression, the severe depression, to understand it. And she came to see if she knew, if that was what was going through. And as we walked out, we were both talking about the woman and I, we were talking about what we learned from the talk. And I was like, wow, they just nailed it, didn't they? And she's like, yeah, I'm so glad, because now I know that's not what I have. Like, I'm lower on the scale. That's really good for me to know. She was really educated about what it is and what it isn't. And I don't think they do things like that anymore. So anyway, that's a great scale to help you. And then they go through some things, and I'm going to go through that in part 3. It's in chapter 3, part 3, that they talk about the cognitive distortions that lead you to have those kinds of feelings. And it's using those cognitive distortions and knowing what they are and being able to recognize them when you go through an interaction with somebody or an interaction with the world. What leads you to have all of those feelings of depression are these thoughts that you have, these cognitive distortions we have. And like Dr. Phil says, perception is reality. They're perceiving. Remember I talked about filters in Pina Colada Family? If you haven't seen that, that's about an alcoholic system. And all these alcoholic systems here are shaming their kids into not having other children and things like that, so that the world is more, cocooned around them, or narcissistic systems. You can read that or see that right here, the Pina Colada Family right there, where I talk about alcoholic systems and what's that like, and to identify it if you're in it. But one of the things they talk about here, right here, is actual mental filter. And so you can go into somebody's house and you can say, oh, they have a whole bunch of things on the table, and they say, what do you want? And they ask for something non-alcoholic when you're an alcoholic. And what you do is you have a filter that says, oh, they're attacking my alcohol problem. Like they're saying that, drinking alcohol is bad, when all they asked for was a non-alcoholic drink. And so they light up. Well, that's a mental filter. But he breaks down the different filters, and I'm going to go into that in part 3. So I will see you on the next one, but I really hope that you enjoy chapter 2 and doing the checklist yourself, depression checklist, and seeing where you are on that scale, or helping a family member figure out where they are on that scale, and learning a bit about what depression is. It was a revolutionary book, and it was used all the way up until about the year 2000, Agenda 21. It was used everywhere, and it's a great way to do depression without drugs. But the checklist will help you, even if you did, because I had to do drugs. Like I had to do drugs I was so severely depressed. I had to do drugs to work my way through this book, and then I got off of them as I dug my way out. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying that I'm like you. Everybody has a very different story. Everybody has a very different upbringing. Everyone has different ways their brain map, but there are very specific trails. Like disgust is a neuron that travels right here. Like they've mapped that kind of stuff. So, you can feel it fire off sometime once you start learning where things are mapped. It's very, very fascinating. But all of our emotions, they are all results of here. And this book really helps you. That's why I talked about electroshock therapy in part 1. That's what they're doing, is they're just kind of numbing it all, like putting those pathways, those dangerous and toxic pathways, to rest for a little while, from what I understand, not a doctor. All right, I'll see you on part 3, and I'll put that right here. So right here, I will put part 1, which is the difference between psychiatrists and psychologists. And then right here, when it's done, I will put part 3. And until then, I'll have something else there. But I love you guys so much, and thanks for going with me on this journey. And I really hope it helps, because it sounds like a lot of people are suffering. So I really hope it helps, because it's just, I've been there. So, all right, love you so much. Bye.